The mighty Marco Polo. His name conjures images of daring exploration and the distant, mysterious East. But centuries later, his tale raises more questions than answers. Was he the ultimate adventurer who brought the wonders of Asia to medieval Europe? Or was he just an early master of the fake-it-till-you-make-it philosophy? In an age without Google or GPS, who could challenge his claims? According to Marco's travels, he journeyed from Venice to the court of Kublai Khan and spent 17 years as the great Khan's trusted envoy. He described glittering cities, coal, silk, and even paper money, painting an exotic and awe-inspiring picture of China. Medieval Europeans, crawling out of the Dark Ages, were hooked. But as time passed, historians started asking, where are the receipts? Here's the first red flag. No Chinese or Mongol records mention Marco Polo, his father, or his uncle. Not a single scroll or dusty ledger lists him in Kublai Khan's court. And let's be real, this wasn't some touch and visit. Marco claimed to have spent 17 years in the empire, not 17 days. A white guy visiting and living there for 17 years and no records. Any Asian people would shake their heads. For a white man living in China for nearly 2 decades, you'd expect some documentation. Yet, the Yuan dynasty, meticulous in recording foreign visitors like Persian astronomers, seems to have missed Marco entirely. Was he just never there? Let's address the elephant, or rather, the wall, in the room. Marco doesn't mention the Great Wall of China. Sure, the wall wasn't as iconic during Kublai Khan's reign, but it still existed. Defenders argue that Marco focused on Kublai's Mongol-centric court and not Chinese landmarks. But 17 years without even a passing mention? For someone claiming to have lived in China for over a decade, Marco seemed remarkably clueless about major cultural staples. Chopsticks? Not a single mention. Tea? Nada. Some might argue that Mongolians didn't use chopsticks but knives and hands due to their hunting and nomadic lifestyle. Well, that was long before Kublai Khan took over China and established the Yuan dynasty. Once they became emperors of China, Kublai Khan and his courtiers might have picked up Chinese cultural practices, right? It's almost like he was describing China through secondhand stories rather than first-hand experience. Coincidence? We think not. Marco's most dubious claim might be his supposed stint as governor of Yangzhou, a major Chinese city. But let's do the math. Marco arrived in China around age 20. Are we to believe that a 20-something foreigner who couldn't speak Chinese fluently was handed such a prestigious position? Unsurprisingly, Yuan dynasty records make no mention of this Italian man running the show. If he held such a high-ranking role, why is history, usually excellent at remembering foreign dignitaries, completely silent? Believers often point to Marco's vivid descriptions of Kublai Khan ordering trees to be planted exactly 3 paces apart along roads to shelter travelers, or his detailed account of paper money made from mulberry bark, stamped with the Khan seal to avoid counterfeit. These intimate details suggest first-hand knowledge. But could these vivid details have come from other merchants? Marco's family were traders, and the Silk Road buzzed with stories. Paper money was already widely used in the Yuan dynasty, so knowledge about it, especially how to avoid counterfeits, would have been critical for any merchant. Wouldn't this be first-hand knowledge for someone in the trade? So, was Marco retelling tales he picked up during his travels rather than living the experiences himself? In his book, Marco claimed to have witnessed Kublai Khan's failed invasion of Japan, thwarted by the divine wind, kamikaze. The problem? The date he provides is off by 7 years from historical records. Did he really witness these events, or was he piecing together fragments of stories he'd heard? Despite the skepticism, Marco Polo's travels became a medieval bestseller. Why? Because it painted a picture of a faraway world brimming with wealth, wonder, and exotic intrigue. Europe, still crawling out of the Dark Ages, was hooked. Marco's tales inspired explorers like Christopher Columbus, who literally carried a copy of the travels on his voyages. Fact or fiction, Marco lit the spark of exploration. Here's a twist. Marco didn't write the book himself. After returning to Venice in 1295, Marco was captured during a naval battle with Genoa. In prison, He shared his stories with Rustichello de Pisa, a romance writer who likely dramatized and spiced up Marco's accounts. Add to that the fact that books were handwritten in that era, with errors and embellishments creeping into each copy. With no printing press, every version of the travels could differ slightly, amplifying the myths over time. So, if Marco Polo had never set foot in China as he claimed, where was he during those 17 years? Some historians speculate that he might have spent time in Central Asia or other Mongol-controlled regions, trading and gathering stories from other merchants. Cities like Bokhara or Samarkand, vibrant hubs along the Silk Road, would have been perfect places for Marco to collect secondhand tales about the Mongol Empire and China without ever setting foot in Kublai's court. So, was Marco Polo a legend or a hoax? The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Maybe he made it to the edges of the Mongol Empire and embellished the rest. Maybe he cribbed tales from other travelers and spiced them up with personal flourishes. Either way, his name endures, and his stories continue to fascinate. The next time you hear about Marco Polo, remember, even the greatest explorers might have been just as skilled at spinning a good yarn as they were at finding new lands. Legend or hoax? We'll let you decide.